Where you get all of this?
Boys wait for other people. Men go out and get it.
People like me and you don't get no second chances, Mouse.
Watch Less is back for a very special edition of the podcast with a very, very special guest. And honestly, I can't front. I've been excited to talk to this guy for a while. I remember when the Charm City Kings trailer hit Twitter, specifically Twitter, it felt like it erupted. You know, I'm seeing this man's riding dirt bikes, you know, he's going across these dirt roads. There's like, you know, you're really getting to see the feel for Baltimore, but you're also getting to see Meek Mill, and I think that's why a lot of people were hyped. But I remember Jahi, and this was the little kid that got active in Queen and Slim. I don't forget about that, my brother. But also, because I'm like, damn, where have I seen this man's face before? And I forgot he's the one that got active in Proud Mary. It's crazy to think that you know, this young man's been doing a lot of this. And what, you're turning 17 in November?
17
December, okay, because we got to fix that because the internet, it's hard finding the correct information. So I'm glad we got you here.
For so long, I've been trying to fix. They're so specifically incorrect. Like they're like a day off. Right. So
it's one of well after this interview we're gonna have to sit and figure out how to get your bio sorted out. But I'm glad we got you here so we can sort it out today. Jahi Di'Allo Winston puts Charm City Kings, in my opinion, he puts the film on his back. He embodies the role of Mouse, who's it's a young kid who he really wants to get into a lifestyle that is probably a little too dangerous for him. Jahi Di'Allo Winston, welcome to the Watch List podcast.
Thank you.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing amazing. How are you?
Look, it's been an honor and a pleasure to be able to talk to you because again, this is a film that on this podcast we got this. It feels like I've been talking about this film since the beginning of the year. You know, it was set to come out a while ago. I know there were plans for, you know, interviews that people wanted to do, and then the world went and it totally changed. Yeah. So it feels like it's been a long time coming. So How are you doing now that we're in this time where we're not that far from the film hitting HBO Max and letting everybody be able to see it?
I'm just relieved. Like, I'm so glad that it's finally going to be out and people are going to get to see it. That was one of my biggest fears when the pandemic hit and everything was sort of shifting right before our eyes. I was just really hoping that it wouldn't get shelved and that people wouldn't be able to see it, and then it would just get released on like some like back alley like streaming service that no one really cares about. But the fact that it's gonna be on HBO Max and the fact that it's gonna be on a platform like and be in such great company with a lot of other black films and black projects is really cool too. So
Right. It's one thing to come out on a streaming service. It's another thing to come out on a streaming service that you can not only watch all of the episodes of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air on, but also catch stuff like the Boondocks. Like it feels like it's a very good fit for what HBO's been doing. But I do wonder, you know, you've been able to actually see the film in theaters?
Yes, I have. Okay. I saw it in theaters at Sundance, and that was
okay.
What was
Was that your first trip to Sundance?
That was my first time going to Sundance. And you know what? The thing about Sundance is, one, it's very cool. Like, it's super cool. But also, you don't really get to do anything but, like, court and promote your movie. So I didn't get to see any other films. I didn't get to see Minari, which is like the Korean family drama. I didn't get to see 9 Days with Winston Duke. I didn't get to see anything but Charm City Kings. I saw our film twice at Sundance. So you could see worse films twice at any film festival though. But wait, before because I want to get to the movie, but I mean, like I love learning that, you know, these fascinating things about you. Who were some of your musical inspirations, if you don't mind me asking? Gambino for sure is my guy.
Okay, that makes sense.
I have like 4. It's really Gambino, Frank, Kenny, and Beyonce. Those are my 4. I grew up like really musically like idolizing those 4 people, and more so their artistry, because I was saying the other night, like, cause I know Lupe was on Twitter talking about better lyricists, and I was like, come on, man, like, we're not about to do this. We are not about to do this. I have this debate. I don't even have this debate. Like, I feel like everyone in my inner circle knows, like, their place. Like, Kenny is the GOAT. I'll go to war about that for anybody. Like, I think actually I get flack from this from a lot of like hip hop heads, but I think Kenny is definitely amongst the GOATs. I think as far as delivery and tonally and lyricist, I think he's a better lyricist than Tupac. I do. I think.
Hey, say that shit. Say
absolutely,
it.
I do. Unabashedly. What up? What up?
Talk it, man.
What up? Yeah, for sure.
That's what I remember having a conversation about that at work, because the conversation is, number one, is it Kenny or is it Drake? And I mean, it's crazy because at a certain point it's just like, well, Drake has A through Z, all of the accolades. So at some point it's like, all right, but for me and what I'm listening to music for and what I want to get out of certain things from artists, I think Drake's not doing what that man's doing. That man, he's got a whole different way about it.
And I guess you can say Drake is more versatile. Drake has allowed himself to be more versatile. But I feel like the space that Kenny has always existed in has come from a place of such honesty. It's like you can't negate that. Like 100%. His lyricism, his pure skill, I just like rapping. And I defend Drake too sometimes, because sometimes people be trying to play my boy. It's like, okay, give Drake his stuff, man. Give him his things.
Well, I guess, I mean, let's segue. I mean, before getting into Charm City Kings, were you a fan of Meek Mill?
I was sort of a fan. I mean, Dreams and Nightmares is a classic. That's just a classic hip hop song. Of course. Like at every party, you know what I'm saying? That's just the best thing to sort of like get hype and all that stuff. And it's just a classic record. But so of course I knew Dreams and Nightmares. But I didn't know like really much else. There was another one that I knew that I can't think of. But I really got really into Meek, like full steam ahead, when Championships came out. And actually, he was working on Championships while he was doing Charm City Kings.
Oh, where?
Yeah, and that's just, I guess, a testament to his work ethic, because he was doing Championships, Charm City Kings, and he was sort of on tour. Like, he was doing shows and back-to-back. And so he would, like, cycle through those things. So, yeah, Championships is sort of like the thing. It's like, okay, like, that was a really great album. I think that's definitely one of the greater R&B, not R&B, but hip-hop albums of, like, the last 5 years, for sure.
Word, yeah. I mean, I think it surprised a lot of people that he could come back that strong,
Yeah.
And I mean, and still stay, you know, relevant. It's hard for a lot of people to be through those situations and be able to bounce back, and then bounce back with something that is actually, moving the culture, at least moving people to, listen more. So props to him for that. Yeah. Working on the album during the film, though, I mean, as someone who, Meek, we've not seen Meek do a lot of acting at all. Would you say that it was like, would that add to the challenge of him trying to make sure he gets the role right for the film?
As far as I'm concerned, just when in working with him, I think we helped each other really. Okay. I think I was a little bit more experienced when it came to being on set, doing film. Well, not really, actually, no, because I had never done a film this high maintenance before. Like we were in such a demanding environment. And a lot of our scenes were really emotional, so I think it took some time to get comfortable. And the beautiful thing about it was really great to see from the beginning of when Meek came to us, because he came to us like maybe a month or so after we had started.
Got you.
And when he first got there, he sort of had his guard up. He didn't really know anybody. A lot of the crew members sort of had preconceived notions about him, you know what I'm saying, he was a rapper and all the things that he's gone through. But it was great and I think he sort of felt that energy, but it was great to see as the process went on, he got more and more comfortable and he started to let his guard down. You know what I'm saying? We were in those emotional scenes. He started to be less afraid to really show his true essence and to be fully immersed into that character, and he does such an incredible job in this film. I'm so excited for people to see him. I think he's gonna really, really impress people and really blow people away with this for sure.
I think that was my thing. It was like in the beginning. I mean, even when Meek, you can't. It's not like he's transforming. He doesn't look like Meek when he gets on camera.
It's Meek,
but
right? It's definitely still Meek.
So you're looking like, okay, how close or far away from who we know this man as is he? And I think within minutes you're like, okay, this is not he's not about to start, picking up a mic and start
Right.
rapping and you could tell. And I think, I guess, to your credit of the bond that you guys created, I think that comes across in those, especially the scenes where it's you and him and you're really getting deep with the conversation. You can feel that from him, in a way that you might not expect from someone who's not as seasoned as an actor.
For sure.
It's almost like that's ingrained in him. Take us back though. I mean, how did you first hear about the role of Mouse, and what was it about the role that intrigued you?
My agent sent me the breakdown for it, which is basically like the script and the character description and all those things. And so I put off reading the script for a while. I just wasn't sure if I wanted to go full steam ahead into this, if this was the right next step for me. Okay. But I nevertheless I auditioned for it. And I saw Barry Jenkins' name, and I was like, okay, this is something different.
Right.
And so I started I auditioned for it, and I got a call back, and then I Skyped with Angel, our director, Caleb Pinkett, our producer, and Clarence Hammond, our other producer. And after that Skype audition, I went to LA for the screen test, and that's where I met Kazai and Danielle Didi, who play Lamont and Swear to God in the film, who do an incredible job. And I think in the room was really when it changed for me. It's really when it sparked something for me, because our chemistry together was so natural, and we didn't know each other at all. Okay. And it was funny because I walked into the room like 20 minutes earlier, and I guess everyone in that room, except for me, because I don't really do that. Like, I just stay to myself. But I think everyone was sort of like looking at, like, sort of trying to analyze the competition. And so we just sort of went from that to like from being friends, like for the majority of our lives. So I think that was definitely a shift for me. And like, okay, this could be something different. And so I did that. I read the script. I love the simplicity of the story. I love that. Right. At its core, it's just about a boy who wants a bike and wants validation from his friends and validation from his mentors. One of his mentors, he really wants validation from. And so I knew that, similar to reading the script for Queen and Slim, that if it feels like I sat down in a theater and watched a movie for an hour and a half, then it's mostly a sign that it's definitely a sign that this is something that I have to do. Without going too deep into the story, I mean, there are some moments and elements in the film that feel like they're plucked right from the headlines, especially when it comes to, the police and young black men. With the way things are going on in the world right now, at that time, were you thinking about, the importance and the impact that this story could have for other young men like yourself? I don't think we were. I don't think that I don't think I was. I think I can sort of get in my own way when I get into that space of what it's gonna do next. I think Ryan Coogler gave an incredible analogy when he would talk about how he would do certain routes in football, and it was a certain route that he had to do where he would catch the ball, and then after catching the ball, you would immediately have to go for the end zone, to go for a touchdown. But he said every time he thought about what he had to do next, he would always drop the ball. And so I thought that was a brilliant analogy, because it's so true. Like, anytime I get into a space where I am supposed to be creative, but I'm sort of thinking about what is this gonna do? Who's gonna see this? Are people gonna see this? Are people gonna like this? I sort of get in my own way, and I sort of start to make decisions that come from a place of a need for monetary validation.
Got you.
As opposed to just doing it because I love the role and I love the character and I'm fully immersed into the story that we're telling. And so I didn't think about it as much on set, but I think now that with it originally being scheduled to release earlier in the year, and the fact that it's coming out now in this moment in the culture, I think really speaks to divine timing, to the divine timing of it all. Because I mean, it was not supposed to come out this late, but I think God knew, and God controlled the universe, and He just knew, like, this is the time for it. So I don't think that it would come out now in this moment by just happenstance. I think it's gonna do something for the culture. I do.
Definitely. It's great because, and I think it's more important. I was having a conversation with Lamar Morris, who is the star of Hulu's Woke, and we had a similar conversation in regards to because he said after doing the show, his thought is now is very similar to his character, where he's being more conscious about the roles that he's choosing, but instead of saying, okay, I'm choosing this role because it feels XYZ in terms of being socially aware, he wants to make sure that he can still balance that line, have the fun, bring the art, but also bring, the message. And again, I think Charm City Kings does a great it does a great service to both of those things, you know what I mean? I also wanted to get into the idea, because you were talking about, a boy and his bike. Were you familiar with Baltimore's bike culture before getting into this?
I was not. I wasn't. I watched the documentary that the film is inspired by, which is 12 O'Clock Boys, and that was the first time that I had known about this culture. I thought the bike culture was something that they had sort of contrived for the film, but it made it even more exciting and even more exhilarating when I found out that this is something that actually occurs in the city, and this isn't just like, oh, what's a story of a marginalized community that hasn't been told before? I know, bikes. Like, it's like, though, this is a real thing, and I knew that if this film was inspired by 12 O'Clock Boys, although we wanted to do our own thing and we wanted to sort of contrive our own narrative, because the 12 O'Clock Boys film, it doesn't really have a narrative. It's just a world, very brilliant step into this world, but there's no narrative or a story. And so we sort of have to create that ourselves. But I knew from the first frame with 12 O'Clock Boys, it's like, okay, if this is our source material in a way, if this is our reference material rather, then this could be something really interesting.
Right.
And that was learning about the culture and learning that it was actually something very prevalent in Baltimore was all the more reason that I had to do it.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess talk about that too. So you watched the documentary, but I mean, you have to ride. So what was your situation in terms of training? Can you talk about how maybe like your stunt coordinators made you get better acquainted and feel more comfortable on the bikes? Were you doing any more research in regards to Baltimore legends in the dirt bike game?
You know what, bro? I hate to ruin the magic of cinema, but I did not ride at all.
What?
No, I know.
Wow.
But you know what? It was like a labor law thing, like child labor laws. I couldn't ride. None of us rode. None, because Didi, none of us we never rode our bikes. But I think just being in that environment though, because it was hard to tell which riders were like a part of Charm City Kings when we were filming, and which riders were just like, oh, we're in Baltimore, like they're just riding their bike down the street. Like it was hard to tell, and I loved that aspect of it, because it's like we're really in the trenches, which is what they called the neighborhood that we were filming in.
Right.
And so it's like, oh, okay, so I feel like I had just been transported into the world of the documentary, and so that made it. I mean, this was the best source reference material. The best reference material, even more powerful than the script, was being in the environment, because 100% of the film was shot in West Baltimore. It was not shot on a soundstage in LA or anywhere. 100% of the film, even reshoots. We didn't film it in West Baltimore and then go to LA to do reshoots. No, all of the film, everything that you see was 100% shot in West Baltimore.
That's amazing. What was the reception from the Baltimore city? The people in the city when they saw you guys coming through? Was it a lot of love?
I think for the most part it was love. I think for the most part it was like, the inquisitiveness, the curiosity of wanting to know, what are these cameras and who are these white people, and because the crew was predominantly white, so they were like, who are these people in our neighborhood? But Baltimoreans, they're so like, I'm on my way to work, man. I'm trying to get to. They don't care really. It's like, oh, they're shooting a movie. Okay, and I get out of my way. I gotta get somewhere. I'm trying to get to my girl's house. I'm trying to, and so that's what I love. There will be times when we will be filming and a big siren just sort of eclipsed and upstaged us during the film, during the scene, and Caleb, our producer, was like, "Let it play. That's Baltimore. Like this is where we are." And there are definitely some Baltimore stories that we have of shooting, and in the midst of shooting a big scene, and a dogfight breaks out across the street. It was a lot of every day something happened. It was
Right,
like
yeah,
Baltimore constantly said, "All right, Baltimore was a character in the film." So it
I
was
was
like,
I wanted to talk about that. I mean, realizing that everything was shot in West Baltimore, and I don't want to say, oh, I learned about Baltimore from The Wire. I've got a couple of homies that are from Baltimore that I've gotten real fly with over the last couple of years. Shouts out to Massive Fan, but they're the ones that told me about the trenches and things like that. So when you mentioned that, that you was really out there.
yeah.
But like that accent is not an easy one to carry. And I know, because I know when people look, especially people from Baltimore, when they look at stuff that's set in the city, the question is, all right, did they get this word right? We don't say it like that. Like, can you talk about that process of adopting that accent and any difficulties you may have had holding on to that?
You new to Baltimore. You gotta go to the ride. The ride? Every Sunday in the summer, everybody with a bike show out.
You never been?
To the ocean. I ain't never been outside West Baltimore before.
We'll go one day.
My bike is the best one out of all of us, bro. You know damn well the clique ain't getting down with no 7th graders. Last year I was just Miles. This year I'm finna be MNC Miles. And nobody gonna stop me.
Yeah, that was really important to me from jump. Just like this is when people, at least in my setting, in my environment, in my immediate circle, that's one of the main things that I knew from Baltimore. It was like the dude, too, blue, all of those things, and so all of those eccentricities of how they speak. And so that was really important to me. It's like, how do I get the audience to look at this and be able to distinctively know this is a kid from Baltimore? I was doing a panel who had a white moderator last night. He was like, I'm just fascinated by these accents. And it's like, that's what I wanted you to feel. Like, I wanted you to feel like you knew this kid, but he's in an environment and a setting that you had never really seen and experienced before. Like, there's still an element of mystery about where he's from, and it's definitely better to have, as a storyteller, it's definitely better to have the audience behind you than in front of you. If they know the environment, if they know the setting, if they know the formulaic tropes of the story that you're telling, you lose them immediately. And so it's always better to have them trying to figure you out and not being able to, than immediately being able to capture the entire the fullness of the story from jump. And so I'm glad that people still, even after they've seen the film, people are still having questions about, is this a real group in Baltimore? Is that how they really talk? Is that how they? And the answer is yes. We didn't make anything up for the sake of Hollywood Hollywood effect or cinema. Yeah, no.
Have you been able to hear from, like, I don't know how many people have seen the film outside of, those who've worked on it and, people in the press, but like, have you been able to hear word from Baltimore residents who may have seen the film and have they any acclaim or any words that they've said about, the depiction of the city or your depiction of a kid in that city?
I mean, all I know is Chino Braxton, the GOAT, who's in our film. He plays Jamal, and he was like, he killed it. Like,
okay,
yeah. So that's all the validation I need.
That's all
like,
you need.
Chino is, he's like the Jordan of Baltimore. Like, Michael Jordan of Baltimore. Like, he's the Jordan of bike culture. He's widely regarded as like the best to ever get on a bike. So him and Wheelie Wayne, who was also in our film. And a lot of people have been, I guess that's been the biggest critique so far, that we didn't have Baltimore people in it. But Queen, Jamal, and Wheelie Wayne, and every writer that you see is from Baltimore.
From Baltimore.
So, Baltimore culture is all throughout this film, for sure.
Right, definitely represented. I think, and I will say too, similar to Meek, I think early on, when Chino's presence is on the film, you definitely feel that. I had no idea who he was. It wasn't until my homie Frazier mentioned Chino. I'm like, oh, so he doesn't do this on, like, he's not an actor on the, because he was the coldest person I'd ever seen in a film. And when he walked into on that set, it looked like.
Yeah, Chino has like an infectious energy, and it's like the first time that you see him, I love that chase scene at the very beginning of the movie. at the ride is one of my favorite parts of the film, because I think Chino carries that like no other, man. Like,
Right.
and I love it. Like now, like that image of him picking up that brick and like throwing it. It's like, yes, yes. Like 12, like, yes.
You feel, especially
Yes.
again with the time of the film coming out, it hits different. It hits way different right now.
Sure. I'm like, yes, I'm glad they didn't take that out, because I've been telling people, it's like, we don't demonize police. We don't need to demonize police. They do it for themselves. But we don't demonize police, but we also don't glorify them either. Like, this is not a, hey, leave police alone movie. Like, this is the truth. You know what I'm saying? My job as an actor is not to look for the facts in the situation, it's to tell the truth. And I think a lot of people get facts and truthfulness and honesty confused. They're like, okay, but truth and facts are two completely different things. You can make lies out of facts. Truthfulness is always going to be truthful, you know? It's always going to be that way. So, yeah, so that's always been my job as a storyteller, and that was just our overall objective as storytellers and filmmakers, just to tell the truth. What is the real environment, and what's the real essence of this environment? And I think we captured it beautifully.
Yeah, and I want to say it's I feel better for the your generation and the generation coming up, especially as filmmakers and creatives, hearing you say things like that, because I think people need to remember that truth and facts are not. You can't vote yet, but I think it's an election year, and there's definitely a difference between the truth and facts, and that some people can't see it. That's a different podcast for a different day.
Yeah, man.
I wanted the character of Mouse. I think when I first saw the trailer and I see him breaking down the world and like just the passion and just the love he has for that culture really spoke out to me. And I'm wondering, it's sad because that's what ultimately gets him in trouble. But like when you're reading that, did you connect with Mouse at all? Were there certain points where you might say that you're very similar to him, and I would hope there's some ways that you were definitely different than him as well.
Yeah, I think at his core, we do have a lot of similarities, because that's a question someone else asked me. They said, you're so different from him, and so how did you go about trying to portray him? And I said, it's because really at his core, Mouse is all of us. He is all of us. We've all been in a situation, I think, for the most part, where we wanted validation from an existential or external force, or external presence other than ourselves and other than the people who really matter to us. We sort of get caught up in the hype of, trying to be this thing for this person and trying to look a certain way and going and about something with something to prove. And I think it's easy for us to get caught up in that space, especially in the culture that we're in now, with social media culture and all of those things, is trying to prove something to someone else. And I think I had to tap in from that space rather than, well, I don't live in the hood. You know what I'm saying? I don't have a hyper obsession with dirt bikes and being a part of this gang of, I don't really like calling it a gang, this group of bike riders, but I do know what it's like to want validation and to seek validation from other people and to be a part of something and to want my friends to think I'm cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think we've all been there in some point in our stage of adolescence, or even now. So when you're growing up or whatever, I'm still there. So tell me how it is. You know what I'm saying? In the future. So
yeah. Hey, look, it keep the value you've got now. I think as long as you stay with your core, stay with that core set of values, and know, because again, you're a person that you're on that track. You feel me? I mean, we'll talk a little. I know there's at least one project that is announced that you were in, so we'll get into that later. But as you're going up on that track, you have to keep, that it's always just keeping that focus, staying the course for what you believe in, because there's going to be so much coming in. But as long as you have, and hey, shouts out to your mom. It sounds like you've got a very stable base. Keep that close, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine for the future. That's a little word of advice that wasn't necessary, but I felt I needed to impart. Before we get out of the film, Charm City Kings, like, what were some of You mentioned dog fights and some of the other fun you had on set, but what were some of the most memorable moments you think for you working on the film?
The big ride sequence at the end, right before the convenience store stuff. And I mean, getting a front row seat to just Chino being in his element and getting to see the writers do what they do. I mean, there's really a brilliance in an artistry to what they do, and I don't think they see it that way. It's just like, this is just what we do. But I love the idea that a city and a culture, specifically speaking on the culture of bike riding in Baltimore, it's so often vilified and so often demonized in the media. But these cats are just, there's really a brilliance. It's almost like they're ballerinas. Like, Chino can go up on one wheel in the 12 o'clock position, which is hence the name, you know what I'm saying, midnight, 12 o'clock.
Talk about it.
And he can, while the front wheel is in the air, he can like tap dance on the seat of the bike. It's crazy. Like, who, like, he like, who is this dude? And he,
right.
It was funny because they didn't want, initially, our original distributor, which was Sony, they didn't want the actual bike riders to do any bike riding stunts. They wanted all stunt riders for that. And so Chino was basically like, I'm not doing one scene, one stunt if I can't ride my own bike. He's like, I'm not doing that. And so Caleb was like, well, Chino, our producer, he was like, Chino, they're worried you're going to fall. And Chino was like, fall? Like,
that's not what I do.
So it's like, I don't fall. He never did. I mean, he's probably, sometime, but he never did. It was never an issue for him. He's really like a master of his craft, for sure.
Right. Have you ever, because you couldn't ride the bikes, did you ever, like, are you thinking maybe in a year or two, maybe I'll get my own bike, maybe start taking some rides in on a dirt road or something?
Nah, man. No. You see, Simon Cowell just busted his behind. I'm sorry.
Right. No, it's fine. It's fine. If you don't want that in there, we will.
Listen, shout out to Simon, man. Get well soon. But that is exactly why. I'm going to stay on 2 feet, you know what I'm saying? Facts. If it ain't a little bike, like, say the Wizard of Oz, I'm good on it. Like, don't put me on a bike, man. Or I can do a scooter.
Okay.
I can do a scooter. Like, that I can
do. A little safer, yeah.
A little safer, you know what I'm saying? But I'm not going to get up no dirt bike. This is high, nigga.
That's the moneymaker, man. You can't mess that up. Yeah. Are you a fan of, like, roller coasters and stuff, though? Or?
Oh, yeah. I'm really adventurous. You know what I'm saying? Okay. It's in my nature. You know, I'm sad. So I'm really adventurous, really outgoing. I will do all that stuff. The only thing that I really won't do is like skydiving from like a big airplane is something that I like. I don't need to do that. Like, I just feel like the courage it takes to like throw yourself out of a plane is like.
What about if it's for a movie?
Yeah, you're gonna have to call the stunt double on that. I'm gonna get the good stunt double on that. I don't know.
I respect it.
I just feel like it's like suicide, but you don't die. Like, that's terrifying. Right. So
chasing death,
that's exactly what it is. It's chasing. So I'm good. You know what I'm saying? I just want to live. Look, where Keydron? Keydron.
I feel you, man. I'm
going to stay on the ground, but I will, you know what I'm saying? I'll do all that other stuff. I love roller coasters. I'm never scared to ride anything. I ride everything at Six Flags, Disney World. I'm with it. I want all the smoke. But I'm just, the stuff that I could potentially, die. I'm good. I will, I saw a video of like Beyonce. She was at like that big tower and she was attached to like the bungee something. I think she was bungee jumping. Okay. That is actually something that I would do. And I don't know why, because it's not completely different from throwing myself out of a plane. Like, I'm just, jumping off of a...
But at least something's on you. You know what I'm saying? Something is there. Yeah.
Yes. I would do that. That looks fun. Absolutely.
That's funny. We'll see. I'll watch you on the sidelines with that one. But hey, peace to you. I mentioned earlier when I was talking in the intro, I made it a point to mention a lot of the projects you've been in because it's interesting to see, before you're 17, you've had a number of really impactful Black creatives in your space. We're talking Taraji P. Henson, Lena Waithe, Melina Matsoukas, and now, Daniel Kaluuya as well as, Tiana Paris and Meek Mill. They've a lot of different viewpoints, a lot of different spots in the industry. Has there been like a piece of advice you've gotten from any of them in particular that's really stood out to you?
You know what? Daniel told me something recently, actually, when we were in quarantine. I called him and I talked to him, and I was telling him everything that was going on with the film, and I was like, yeah, it's going to be on HBO Max now, and you know what I'm saying? I'm just a little uncertain. I don't know, because it's such a new streaming service and everything like that. And he was like, bro, just remember. He was like, it's not about everybody seeing it. It's about the right people seeing it. And I think that was definitely like, oh yeah, like it is. Like, who cares if
right.
It's like a light bulb went off, and he was like, it's not about everybody saying it, it's about the right people saying it, and it's a testament, because that was sort of his break. I mean, he did an episode of Black Mirror in 2011, and it only aired in London, but then a few years later, Netflix put it on their streaming service, and Jordan Peele saw that episode of Black Mirror and casted Daniel in Get Out. So that's how it happens. It's not about everyone seeing it. When that came out, everyone didn't see it, but the right person saw it, and it ended up changing his life. And so I think remembering that, and I think that's great for all entertainers to remember, you know what I'm saying? It's not about everyone seeing it. Don't worry who's going to listen to it and who's going to stream it and who's going to buy it, and, you know. You just gotta worry about the authenticity, and you just continuing to chase and better your craft.
Right.
And that's just what I'm trying to do, man. Sure.
Before we get out of here, Jahi, I was wondering, for kids or anyone that's really wanting to follow in your footsteps specifically, whether, person of color, underrepresented in Hollywood, do you have any advice for people who would want to get their foot in the door or try to express themselves in a similar way, a similar path that you've gone on?
I have trouble giving advice, because I always take it pretty seriously, but I always say representation is extremely important, but what's even more important is what you represent. And so you have to know what you want to do, know the kind of stories that you want to tell, and why you want to tell them. Because you can't get in these spaces and these executive positions, or even be at the center of a franchise and not be there with a purpose. Okay, I am the first Black person to get here. Now, how am I going to pay this 100-fold, and how is this going to serve my people? How am I going to use this to elevate and give back, and be of service to my people, to Black people? And so I think just understanding that and knowing that there is a responsibility that comes with representation. And so take that very seriously and study everything. I used to stay up all night just watching everything, watching interviews, reading, trying to find scripts, writing really bad scripts, and study everything, watch everything, and just fully immerse yourself into the culture. Don't do it if you are concerned with vanity or anything else, and don't do it if you are obsessed with the idea of immediate fame, because it will not happen for you if you want to have a substantial and sustained career in this industry. So just, relax too. Like, don't overthink it either, because that's something that I have to work on. I'm trying to get there. Don't overthink it. Just allow yourself to just be.
Jahi, thank you very much for coming through. Anybody watching, listening, make sure HBO Max, October 8th, Charm City Kings. You'll see Jahi's face along with Meek Mill, Chino, Tiana Paris, a number of amazing actors, performers, bike riders, and just dope Baltimore people. Jahi, thank you for coming through. Really appreciate you.
Great, thank you.
If you enjoyed that conversation with Jahi Di'Allo Winston, check out the full interview on the Watch Less podcast. The Watch Less podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.